Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and today in this video we'll be covering my final round from the Kings Island Open tournament, which I finished yesterday. At the time, my rating USCF wise was 1887 over the board, and let's take a look at what happened in this final game. So I was playing the black pieces. Here my opponent opens with e4, I go for c5, my Sicilian. We go into dragon, accelerator dragon, the modern variation, pretty standard. And here I go for the move d5. What's funny is that we actually went into a variation that longtime viewers might know from the Quebec Open Championships, which I covered a while back. I'm not too sure if I covered this exact game from back then, but if I did, then some of you may know it was from, I believe, my round 5 game, where we got this exact same position, and my opponent actually here played bishop f3, which my opponent still did in this game, and here I prepared the move queen to a5. The idea with queen a5, this was actually something I remembered over the board that I had prepared back then. So here I played the move queen a5. I blitzed it out instantly. And here my opponent actually doesn't... well, the first thing you'll see is that after queen a5, that this actually offers up a free pawn. Because this knight is only defended once and it's attacked twice. In this game, my opponent doesn't actually take and goes for the move c3, at which point I follow with knight takes on d4. I'll quickly go through why taking this pawn is actually a bit dubious. So here I prepared in the past knight takes on c6, let's say b takes, and if you play bishop captures on c6, just to note, in the Quebec Open Championships, my opponent played the move b4 back then, and after queen captures on b4 and bishop captures on c3, here I played bishop a6, and I ended up losing later on because of this passed c pawn. Anyways, in this game, so let's say b takes c, and bishop captures on c6, so here rook b8. The idea is that this b2 pawn is really difficult to defend. You can't play c3 because simply rook captures on b2. You can't play rook b1 because, well, there's a double attack here and I can still win this pawn. Or I can even capture on a2. Both are options. And you also can't move this pawn out of the way because then I simply have bishop captures on a1. And so capturing with the bishop doesn't work because then I simply regain the pawn, and these two pawns, the A and C split pawns, are really easy to attack for me. Also, considering I can bring up my bishop, I can bring my rooks into the game, it's very simple for me to play. So let's take a look at what happens if bishop takes. If pawn takes, knight takes, here I have to play queen c7, I have to defend e7. And then here, the best move is to play knight b4, at which point I can follow up with bishop b7 to prevent knight e5. And at which point we continue to play chess. Knight d4 seems to be the most natural move, but however this is actually not good because I have the move bishop a6. This targets the rook on f1 and also prevents the very good jump for my opponent, which is knight b5. After rook e8, here I can play rook a to d8. This is something I prepared, pinning the knight to the queen, and I'm threatening e5 in the future. You can move the queen to some random square because I can simply win this knight on d4. So you have to play something like queen to g4 to get out of the pin and also defend this knight, at which point I have h5. If you play queen h4, I attack the queen again with bishop f6. Here queen f4 doesn't work because I can simply capture and win this knight on d4. G4 is covered by my pawn on h5, and if you play queen e4, here I have bishop b7 targeting the queen. If you play knight b5 to retarget my queen, I have queen c8 here attacking the queen, and also threatening the pawn on c7. If you capture this pawn, thinking you get another tempo on my queen, here I have bishop captures on e4, and after knight takes and rook takes, here I'm simply up a piece. There's a lot of pressure here on these diagonals. My rooks are going to get really active, and this is just completely winning for black. So going back, this is all something I had prepared in the past, and I remembered over the board, thankfully. After queen a5, my opponent plays c3, and as I mentioned here, I took on d4. I have to eliminate this really strong knight here, at the cost of sort of limiting my queenside development because of this bishop targeting the b7 pawn. So this bishop can't really move that well, like it can't move out that often, like that easily. But I have to get rid of this knight. This knight is just simply too strong. Here I calculated if you play bishop captures on d4, I played something like rook d8. I probably play something like rook d8, pinning the bishop. And you can't move the queen again to some random square because I can win a pawn, pretty much. So instead, in the game, my opponent took with the pawn, which makes logical sense. Here I played rook d8. Again, you can't move the queen to some random square because I do have two pieces attacking. And here I'm maybe threatening e5. There is d5 in the air, so I don't really want to push e5. but there are still chances for both sides. Here my opponent plays queen e2, which is a little bit of an inaccuracy because it allows me to get my bishop out. Here I play bishop to e6. My opponent's idea with queen e2 is that if we trade, then here my opponent gets in with the queen. And this is, honestly speaking, really dangerous for my position because these two pieces are still undeveloped. My opponent's rooks are going to come in soon. This bishop is still putting really nice pressure. It can maybe go to d5 at some point, so it's quite dangerous for me to play. So that's why I came up with the move bishop e6. It looks like it hangs the b7 pawn, but after bishop captures on b7 and rook b8, you play bishop f3, then I can simply capture on d4, and this is also the point of bishop e6. After captures and captures, there is no queen captures on e7 because it's blocked by the bishop on e6, and at which point I have a lot of activity here. The rook can come into d2, supported by my queen on a5. I can play rook c1. I can double up here. I can even triple up here. I can double up on the d file. This is really good for black. So my opponent doesn't actually take. He plays rook f to d1. And here I play bishop d5. This was the whole point of playing bishop e6, bishop d5, is so that when my bishop's on d5, this bishop will no longer be targeting the b7 pawn. If you move your bishop somewhere, you're just wasting a move and you're just letting my bishop sit here on this really nice square, something like e6, and this bishop will never move. I can work around this pawn. I can like corral it and win it in the future. I can double up on the d file and just move this bishop to like c6, for example. This is just very good for black. So here my opponent trades. Here better would have been to play queen captures on d5, but I was worried about something like rook c1, and like if we do something like this and trade, I thought maybe there was like chances for, well, I guess not here because then you lose the d4 pawn, but I just didn't really like it too much. Also, I thought rook captures on d5 looks a lot more aggressive. I'm planning on doubling up queen b6 or queen b4 and then playing e5 at some point to shred the whole position open and win the d4 pawn. Here my opponent plays queen c4. Quite a nice move because here the idea is if I play rook a to d8, which is actually still the best move, but I saw after bishop to f4, planning on queen to c7, I thought this was a little bit difficult to play because rook captures on d4 and bishop c7. Here, I forgot about rook captures on d1 straight up. I calculated only rook captures on c4, which is just completely winning for white because rook captures on d8 would check, bishop f8, and here you capture the queen, and now you're just simply up a rook. Okay, I missed rook captures on d1, which is why I didn't actually play rook a to d8, but instead I think my move is actually better, and if you give the computer the bit, it actually says so as well, which is the move queen to d8. This backwards retreating move, it does two purposes, actually three. One, it sets up the move e5 because there is a pin here. The rook is only defended once, and I have two attackers. Once this position opens up, like let's say something like e5, then here actually, this is really good for me. Queen f1, and we actually simplify fully down to me being simply up a rook, and this is completely winning. I can capture on e5. These two pawns are both weak. I'm up a rook, so it's not too difficult to win. Second purpose it serves is also allowing me to play rook a to c8, allowing my other rook to take control of the c file. And a third purpose is that it also basically puts more pressure on this pawn. It allows me to play queen d7 and put my rook behind the queen as well. So I can triple up on the d file and pretty much just straight up just win this pawn. So in the game, my opponent does something really weird. So after queen d8, I'll give you guys a bit of a backstory. I got up and went to the washroom. And so I went to the washroom. It was like really far away. And once I came back, I saw my opponent had played a move and was leaving the board. So keep in mind, so basically in the tournament venue, since I was playing in the under 2100 section, our boards were further back into the room. It was like a really large room, and you have to like, basically for some perspective, from one end to the other end takes like 2 minutes to get to the other end, and my board was like really near the other end. Like I was playing on board like 29 or something, so my board was really far in. And I saw my opponent walking down the hallway to leave the playing hall. And their face looked completely normal. So I was like, okay, they probably played the move that I had thought of, which is something like rook a to c8, which makes sense. And here I was probably just going to play e5 and see what happens. However, here, once I got back to the board, my opponent actually had played the move bishop to g5. This move completely shocked me. So firstly, I thought, okay, I saw my opponent on the way out, so and they look really calm. So does that mean I missed something, or is it just that this is just a complete blunder? So I looked at the position and I realized this is definitely a complete blunder because I remembered that when I prepared this variation for the Quebec Open Championships, I made sure to look at something that was relatively calm and didn't have too many and doesn't have like too much tactical flair, or isn't something like the King's Indian Defense where you're just straight out trying to kill your opponent. And I remember this led to really calm middle game positions. So rook captures on g5 looked really viable for me. And next thing I looked at was to see if there were any tactics, and I couldn't find any. So here I simply captures on g5. And my opponent actually returned to the board like 1 or 2 minutes later, and they straight up, once they saw the position, they just straight up put their head in their hands and just started to, and basically I realized at that point that my opponent had straight up just blundered a piece. So at this point, simply rook a to c1 was played, so that you can maybe play queen c7 and prevent me from playing rook a c8 to get at the c file. Here I play rook back to d5. I'm targeting this pawn. Queen c7. Here I don't want to take yet. I know simplifying is probably better, but I realized that like after something like this, you can win this pawn on b7, and there is a 2-on-1 here. So I'm just trying to limit as much risk as possible, because after bishop f6, like this is completely winning. I'm up a full bishop for free, but I just want to try to get it as simple as possible. So I was trying to spot a variation where I can win this pawn on d5 and allow you to take this pawn on b7, but only after I capture this pawn on b2. So basically try to win a free pawn. And here after queen c7, I spotted the move queen d7. The idea is if you take, and if you play d5, trying to get out of the way, here I can simply double up. And once I double up, if you play something like rook c5 to protect this pawn, I have bishop captures on b2. And then I can play e6 later. You can't take because I have back rank checkmate, and also I'm just pinning it anyway. And if you play d6, then I like bishop a3 to target the pawn on d6. And going back here, here I can also straight up just capture on b2. There is no rook b1 because after bishop f6, or even bishop e5 if I want to, you can't capture the pawn on b7 because it's defended by my rook that's now on d7. And the initial idea with queen d7 is to try to put my rook behind the queen, rook a to d8, and then I have a triple stack on the d file, which should lead to a winning of this pawn on d4. So here, queen b4, I take, here queen takes, and here I find a very nice variation that just simplifies. Bishop takes looks more obvious because it doesn't hang on e7, but I find this variation that just simplifies everything. Queen takes on d4, queen captures on e7, queen d1 check. You can't take the queen because this leads to back rank checkmate. So you have to play queen e1, and after takes, and bishop captures on b2. If you play rook to b1, here I simply have rook to d2, king f1. Here there's a lot of ways to win. I don't really have to worry about how I want to win. I can play bishop d4. Now I can give away b7 because I get the f2 pawn and the a2 pawn, at which point my a pawn would be passed. So here, once we get to here, bishop captures on b2, g3, I play rook d2, rook e7, bishop d4, and here I just simply clean up a bunch of pawns. And the final, I guess, critical moment, or the moment that needed a little bit of calculation, was after a4 and rook c4. Here I can give away the bishop, because after a2, there's no way to stop this pawn from queening. If you play rook a4, I play check, king e2, and I queen, and you have to give away the rook, at which point I'm up a rook and a pawn, and I should be completely winning. And going back here, there is no rook b1 because I can simply take. And if you play king to e1, here I can simply play rook h2, and you're not quick enough in time to stop this pawn. Here I can just simply checkmate like this. And alternatively, if you play rook a4, sorry, not king d1, if you play rook a4, here I can queen, and after takes, I can play rook h1 check, skewering the king and the rook. And here, once again, I'm up a rook and a pawn, and I'm completely winning. So after the move a2, in this position, here my opponent simply resigned the game, seeing as there is no way to stop me from getting a queen, or at the minimum, having to give away their rook. So what to say about this game? So besides from the blunder that my opponent made, which kind of made the game end a bit more prematurely, I still think I played really well. In fact, I looked at my accuracy afterwards. On Lichess, it actually said I played at 98% accuracy with 0 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, and 0 blunders, which is very, very good. In fact, that's my highest accuracy to date in any tournament game, online or over the board. Chess.com said I was at 95 accuracy, which is still very good. Only made 1 inaccuracy according to Chess.com. So yeah, very, very happy with this game. And if you saw my round 4 recap, you would know that this tournament did not go well for me in the first 3 rounds. Again, I lost to a 1700 in round 3 and drew to 1600s in rounds 1 and 2 respectively. Finally won in round 4 against the 1750, and this game I won against the 1800. The ratings, I guess, matter a bit less in this case. I'm going to drop rating anyway. In fact, my rating now is 1875. That's all right. But this last game at least proved to me that at least I found my form. And basically, I can't go any lower than this pretty much in terms of a result, like relative to my opponent's ratings. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time in my next recap.